Hey there guys, it's Joe. Welcome back to my channel. Now the reason that I wanted to talk to you guys today is actually to bring up the idea of power creep. And I know it's something that not just within Final Fantasy trading card game, but within a lot of card games, that the power creep is something that everyone's kind of afraid of, thinking that it's going to ruin a game. And in all honesty, I actually kind of agree with you. And to say that power creep isn't a thing at all is naive, quite frankly, purely because, like, you know, you have to kind of make new sets exciting in one way or another. And I actually really enjoy the idea of rotation, and I think that that's something that helps games along quite well. But that's a discussion for an entirely different video. The reason that I want to bring you here today is because I wanted you guys to have a look at some of the cards from Opus 1. So this is cards that came out when the game first came out. They're still relevant today, still really popular in tournament play, and I really want you guys to come and have a look at some of these cards with me so that you can bear them in mind for your own decks and for everybody else's. So if you want to see a bunch of cards that are still relevant from Opus 1 today, then just keep on watching. Now the first card that I wanted to talk to you guys about was Scholar. Now these cards are in no particular order, I just wanted to highlight a big old bunch of these cards from Opus 1 so that you guys can bear them in mind for your own decks. And just bear in mind the fact that Power Creep isn't nearly as bad as you guys think it is, but Scholar is a card that's never really fallen off since it first came out in Opus 1. It's always been good. As a 2 CP backup for water, and there are a lot of good slots for 2 CP backups in water, but Scholar has always been relevant purely because, you know, it's a great method of allowing you to come into play effects multiple times. Like I've been using it with Renoa for a long time, or since Opus 6 was released. I've been using it with Viking, and it works really well with that. You can use it in response to blocking so that you get the block because you've declared it and then you get to keep your guy. It's breakable at any given time, which means that it doesn't have to be triggered by something. So if you need to make room for a 5th backup, you can always use Scholar. And it's also a great way of evading kind of area of effect or abilities, things like Shantotto, who is another card from Opus 1 that we'll come to later. Valofor, also a card from Opus 1. You know, there's loads of really good, strong effects that Scholar allows you to evade, so I definitely think the Scholar will see play for quite some time. Now the next one I want to talk about is actually 2 cards, but it's Chaos and Cosmos. Now, Chaos and Cosmos were really hyped when the game first came out because it allowed you to kind of, you know, dull for any colour or anything like that, but it kind of fell off very quickly, and that includes by me. I stopped running them very quickly. But I think that now that people are starting to experiment with kind of duo-coloured and tri-coloured decks a lot more, or even more than 3 colours, they're starting to come back in again. And since Camlanaut came out in Opus 5, Chaos at least has seen a lot more play. So the fact that we also now have Materia and Spiritus means that you have two different backups within your light or dark frame that allow you to play multiple guys. So it's something that people can actually do, and it's something that I've been experimenting with for a little while, and I'm actually starting to nail it. So once I get the deck finished, I'll show you guys what I've been planning. But I think that it's actually something that's going to stick around for quite a while, and as a 2 CP backup, again, there are so many good 2 CP solid backups in Opus 1 that you just can't forget them, really. Now, while Opus 3, 4 and 5 have all kind of given us quite the discard engine, and it's something that's made Mono Ice into something very strong and popular, a lot of the basis for a discard package actually comes from Opus 1, and that comes in the form of things like Squall, Argath and Serra, all of which discard cards when they come into play. Squall in particular has started seeing a little bit more play since Opus 6 because now he has a Searcher in Laguna who is a forward that also powers up Squall. So you kind of have this 1-2 punch that's actually quite effective. You also have Opus 6 Squall as well, who can replace this one, but that doesn't make this card any less strong. And then Serra and Argath just work in conjunction with any kind of discard deck. So while, you know, people kind of worry about things like Thaumaturge or Genesis, it's key to remember that Opus 1 has actually kind of given us the basis to run a discard engine since the beginning of the game, and it's always kind of been there. So if you hadn't been factoring it in then maybe you should be factoring it in now. Something else that we've seen in Opus 1 and pretty much never since is backup removal, and that comes in the form of Archer and Hecatonka, where, I mean, you also have Sephiroth that can do it, but Sephiroth obviously sees significantly less play than the other 2. But we've never really seen any backup removal since these 2. We had Heretical Knight Garland in Opus 5, but he sees very fringe play. I do actually quite like the card, but it doesn't see as much play as it could. But Archer and Hecaton have seen play since the beginning of the game, and there's nothing else quite like them. And certainly, and again, then we comes back to the 2 CP backups being strong. Archer's been really, really good since the beginning of the game and gives wind, you know, something that very few other colours can do. And then I've used Hecaton pretty much all the time since Opus 1 because I love the card. I think the interactions with it are amazing, but especially between things like it and Graviton, it and Ralban. You've got like so many cool interactions with the Hecaton that these cards will see play until some better, like power creeped if you will, backup removal comes out, and we've not seen any as of yet. Now, board wipes are something that we've seen a lot of in Opus 1 and not an awful lot of since. I mentioned already things like Shantotto and Valifor, which are both very, very good. Valifor in particular sees a lot of play in monster-based decks because it gives you an edge by having a load of guys that aren't really hit by Valifor, whereas Shantotto sees pretty much play in 99% of Earth decks, and it's just a very, very good card, and it's been sought after since the beginning of the game, and it's still very, very high value in people's trade folders now. But I also wanted to touch on Cloud of Darkness. Now, Cloud of Darkness kind of waxes and wanes in its usability, but it's still a really, really good card. And if you have guys that kind of benefit from being sent to the break zone, then you can take more advantage of Cloud of Darkness than you possibly could the other two, because, well, they don't go to the break zone if you use the other two, whereas with Cloud of Darkness they do. It's also a really, really good out to Gullwings, which are very, very popular currently because they're very, very difficult to get around once they have an established board. So, there's definitely cards in Opus 1 that you could look back on and think, hey, no, maybe I should be bearing this in mind for the current meta. And I honestly think that Cloud of Darkness, alongside things like Valifor and Shantotto, board wipes in general, are just very, very good. Diving back into our 2CP stapley forward backups, we have the Red Mages from Opus 1, both the Fire one and the Lightning one. These have been played since the dawn of time, and they're both still really good now. The Fire Red Mage is one of Fire's saving graces, and making so your opponent's guy can't block is very, very powerful. Doesn't do too well against like the aforementioned Gullwings, but anything that kind of walls up and you have an advantage straight away. And then, the Lightning Red Mage, which grants haste to any forward. Haste is an extraordinary keyword in this game, so having the ability to grant it just whenever you want is very, very powerful. Now, these guys don't see play in 3s as much as they used to, but people definitely still play at least 2 in most Fire/Lightning decks, or 2 of each if it's a Fire-Lightning deck, and I do think that we've not had anything quite as strong as these, or to kind of knock them off the face of everybody's decks. They're just good cards, and there's so many of these in Opus 1 that it's you just got to keep looking. And there's so many good cards in Opus 1 that it actually still shocks me that a lot of these haven't fallen off the map. But Red Mage in particular, both of them have definitely stood the test of time. Now, this is a card that's actually very near and dear to my heart, and this is Yoona from Opus 1. Now, both Yoonas from Opus 1, the common and the hero one, see a lot of the rare and the hero one, do still see a lot of play today. Mostly the hero variant, because things like Gullwings don't require Yoona anymore, thanks to new Riku and Pain. Yoona sees play for an entirely different reason, and that is usually Chaos Walker of the Wheel. And she has seen play since Opus 3, which is when Chaos was released, that, Yoona's just never been bad. And then if you're playing a mono water deck, then 2CP Yoona actually does very, very well as well, like making Cuchulainn that little bit cheaper, making various different Leviathans cheaper. Leviathan doesn't see as much play as it once did, admittedly, but the Yoonas that can capitalise on various different summons that you're playing, and, the Yoona that can, or the 5CP Yoona that makes it so that anything goes to the break zone is removed instead, is a great meta call against a wide variety of decks. Now, one of the most common cards that you see in play, even today, that comes from Opus 1 is Maria. Now, Maria just is a good card. You can't argue with Maria. There are very, very few decks that, tap into wind that don't run Maria, whether it be monocoloured or multicolored. It just works across the board, and that 1000 power can make such a difference in your games. And, not just Maria, but all of the power boosters from Opus 1, so your Duke Log, your Lulu, your Lebro, all of those guys, they still see play in monocoloured decks today, and they're just, it's something you don't necessarily have to run as much as you used to. There is plenty of different options, but if you've still got loads of cards from Opus 1 and you're looking to get back into the game, then I wanted to reassure you guys that there are so many cards that you have from back then that are still relevant now that you could easily just get back in if you wanted to. And Maria and her kindred spirits, if you like, are all still very, very welcome in the meta today. Summons from Opus 1 largely have fallen off for the majority of them, so you don't see as much Leviathan, you don't see as much 4CP Odin as you used to. However, there is still some summons in Opus 1 that still see a good amount of play. I've already mentioned Valor 4 for various different reasons, but 7CP Odin still sees a lot of play, you know, obviously primarily as an EX burst, and decks that use a lot of EX bursts, like Lightning Water for Sawyer decks, or any kind of Lightning Water deck that uses Ephemeral Summoner, runs Odin beautifully. And then you also have things like Moogle, which if you're running multicolours like Tricolor Plus, or if you're running a larger number of light or dark cards, Moogle can actually help quite a lot. And as an EX burst, it's still a plus, which in a meta full of discard can actually help, you know, ease that burden a little bit. And you've got plenty of other ones that do still see fringe play, like Fairy, which is also fairly useful against Ice primarily, because it does both of the things that Ice doesn't want you to do. It doesn't see as much play as like Odin or you know, some of the other summons that come later in the game, but it's still worth bearing in mind. So definitely don't write off a lot of these. Brynhilda has gotten a lot stronger as well, thanks to the new Vermilion Bird Katuna. You know, I think that, you know, being able to pull one out of your deck or making it so it's that little bit more powerful can do wonders for it. So it's definitely worth keeping hold of all of these cards if you have them all. Another character that's done really, really well more recently, for two different reasons, are the two different Barts that are in this set. So the first Bart's being pretty much predominantly played in mono wind only, still has crazy amounts of value, being a essentially free 9k guy as an EX burst that can reactivate all of your guys. So you already have a natural combat against Ice, which is again something that a lot of people worry about when they go to tournaments, but you have a natural counter to it in Bart. And then you have the other Barts who fits into so many different archetypes, and you know, the age-old joke of the Barts has all the jobs. He's still relevant. You know, you could put him in a Warrior of Light deck, you could put him in a Gullwing deck, you could put him in anything. You have Opus 3 Legendary Barts, which does a very, very similar kind of thing with a larger payoff if you get all of his abilities active. But if you just want a half-decent big guy that does a lot of work, then this Bart actually can do you wonders. So there's so many cards that I would really love to highlight from Opus 1. In fact, there are like at least kind of 40, 50 good cards that are still played today. Sure, there are cards that aren't as relevant as they used to be, and some of which are very near and dear to me, such as Ultimisia. She's just a little bit too slow now, or she has been for quite some time, to be honest, or since Opus 2 and 3 even. She was always fairly slow. You know, Light Cloud isn't quite the monstrosity that he was when Opus 1 was released. Tidus, however, is another one that I did want to point out, can see a lot of play now, thankfully, you know, mainly on the back of other cards that have supported him, so he can be played in more than just the Water, Wind, YRP and Tidus deck that he used to be played in, because you do still have Aerith, who is again in Opus 1 and can protect him from EX bursts, but not only that, but you now have Wall from Opus 5, who can do a great job of protecting him from EX bursts and making it so that you can kind of poke before you go off with his Blitz Ace effect. So just take a look at all of the different cards that you have available to you and just kind of take stock of the fact that power creep in Final Fantasy TCG isn't nearly as bad as it is in some other games. I'm not going to name names because I haven't played a lot of them in a very long time, but I wanted you guys to take stock of what's in Opus 1. I'm going to do a similar video to this about Opus 2 and 3 as well, because I want people to see that there's so much more that's available to you than just kind of the single-minded decks, if you will, that you see online, or you see people like on Facebook or otherwise sort of going, oh my god, I don't know how to beat this. There are plenty of options for you to at least experiment with so that you can find answers to the things that you're struggling with. But that's pretty much it for this video. You know, I wanted to show you guys all these different cards. There's so much from Opus 1 that's still really great. So if you get your hands on some of it, maybe from somebody who doesn't play the game anymore, or if you find some in stock or anything like that, I don't think that it's still being printed regularly, but I do think that there are stores that are still selling Opus 1, so you can still get hold of it. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people who, you know, will help you out with a lot of the commons and uncommons. A lot of the 2CP backup stapley kind of cards that I mentioned are all common, so they're really easy to get your hands on. And then, yeah, just go out there and experiment and try and find new things that you enjoy. So thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget about the giveaway that I've also been posting this past week. You still have a couple of weeks to get in on that, and there you can win a big old bunch of boosters from Opus 3, or you can win one of my hand-painted cards. So if you wanted to check the video that describes what happens in that, then I'll leave a link in the description box below. And leave a comment deciding on what sort of things you want to see from me, or if you want to see some more card videos. A lot of people ask me for underrated stuff, so that's why I've posted this video today. And then therefore, I'll hopefully be able to see a load of you guys soon. So thank you very much again for watching, and I'll speak to you guys later. See you later. Bye now.